See, when after PKOs declined due to veto Schaefer 20D peacekeeping has gone out, the Council failed to extend operation due to Russian veto. Russian relations with African governments through Wagner have complicated. Miss Africa does not trust Western Missional 23. Peacekeeping in its Western-dominated form under pressure, the states from the global south are demanding their same peacekeeping declining. Use will continue the actives after a voice Marithi 23. The P5 will weaken the legitimacy of the UNSC. 60% of issues discussed by the UNSC are in Africa, yet the continent does not have any representation. Restoration of the UNSC and elimination of the veto is a necessary prerequisite. Peacekeeping stalls. Second 19. PKOs prevent conflict. If the UN invested in PKOs with strong mandates, conflict would reduced by 2/3. Withdrawal causes instability. Adams 23. Africa isn't ready for a withdrawal phase. Security vacuum. PKOs have played a crucial role for 60 years. They prevent state collapse, removing lead to more violence. Regional efforts have been adequate conflict cascades. Finnegan 20. Leaders ended arms treaties and creating an arms race with low barriers to nuclear war. Anyone considering to a flash with the situation where itself the implication for global security. Africa experiences violence spilling over and threatening to suck the whole region if unchecked. Devolve into war. Extinction. Start 15 a nuclear war. Create an environment too cold to grow food. Humans would advance C2 as Zapatron attacks against Zaporizhzhia are increasing. Ivan 24. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the front line of Russia-Ukraine conflict. The plan is not fully offline. And TCH on Monday. Russia ship blame onto Ukraine for attacks. Occupiers are preparing another false flag operation. Thankfully, Murphy 24. The SE will meet paramount to ensure attacks will mark the beginning of a new war. Russia will veto any action. Gardner 22. Ukraine has called for UN peacekeepers. There's no solution at IAEA. Russia could veto any resolution. A peacekeeping force would end Russian control of the plan. Removing vetoes. Keycon 23. Demilitarization, remove all military and equipment from the vicinity and establish a nuclear protection so that prevent a nuclear acts in the zone may avoid further conflict that hasn't been established due to refusal of the Russian side is popular. SCR 24. Council members present a popular position on the security of ZNPP to express support that action is urgent on Monday. Recent attacks significantly increased risk and set a precedent that the confinement structure was hit weird, dangerously close to a nuclear acts sanctions. Force complies. Mickelson 22. The SE will remain unable to impose sanctions due to veto power. Nuclear acts and draws a NATO triggers Article 5. UA 22. Any nuclear acts in Zaporizhzhia causing irradiation would be a breach of NATO's Article 5 and attack against them all. That's because Meliopoulos 22 damage could lead to radiation. Zaporizhzhia is in the middle of the continent. No matter where the wind is blowing, someone's going to get contaminated. NATO-Russia war escalates swiftly. Kalisia 18. Russia assumes conflict can be controlled and threats of escalation could be effective. It would exploit regional divisions. Any conflict would have a nuke dimension. A nuclear shot would be fatal. It would be lethal. False flag attack signal escalation. Russian-NATO conflict would be a leapfrog of escalation. Both sides underestimate results. C3 stated the U.S. is blocking Palestinian state affirming solves. Letter 24. U.S. vetoed a widely backed resolution for Palestinian state. The possibility of a Palestinian state enables Saudi normalization. SMP 24. Saudi minister says we'll normalize with Israel without a passive Palestinian state normalization solves conflict in 2 weeks versus mediation. And Yakara yesterday, Israel are on a collision course. Iran launched military assault. Saudi has the capability to mediate and ease tensions per barrel. Oil could spike to 150 per barrel, lead to inflation seconds. Deterrence. Mando 23. Normalization could undermine Iran's regional dominance. Creating united front of Iran has diminished the region. It could become more stable. Action touch inspired. P24. Israel strike on Iranian nuclear facility came days after joining missile assault. Regional tensions increase. Goes nuclear model. Many 24. IRGC could respond if Israel attacked nuclear sites. Also shift stance on nukes. Would be likely for Iran to pursue nukes facilities. Were target that escalates to war. Bauer 20. That may be inapplicable due to Iran's defiance of logically to the nuclear war by minus calculation. Extinction via great power drawing. Every 13 Israeli attack escalated to a global nuclear war. Russia and China drawing nukes would be used. It could destroy human civilization. Oil spikes also cause recession. Egan 24. Stripping oil president made worries about a wider war. Hurt spending and delayed rate cuts. Oil prices spiked to $115 raised recession. C4 genocide. The UN as it suffers from instability. 24 is the brink. Dempsey 23 competing interests. Challenge to international war. 2024 bill in the assess of whether the UN saves us from future threats. P5 used the hidden veto to kill humanitarian intervention. Horio 4. The P5 pressured the council to veto. The council never discussed the crisis. P5 member considers eventually the hidden veto weakens resolutions by removing language disapproved by the P5. The council fails to act during the Rwanda genocide due to the hidden vetoes of friends of the U.S. reforms needed. Warner 22. Military intervention could stop militias from systematically massacring their own people. The status quo for genocide prevention will be in action. Affirming allows for preemptive conflict resolution. Calendar 19. Preemptive mechanisms addressing conflict would mitigate conflict and help states to transition from civil wars by abolishing permanent membership. The UNSC could take immediate action to cut the next card. Independently, genocide comes first. Gallagher 15. Policymakers don't think genocide poses a threat in the same way pearls and drug trafficking do genocide erodes the authority of the UNSC. Authority made a road to the point that international instability arises. States fail to afford to understand standards of what constitutes rightful use of force.
Everything except for
Pigmon.
Everything except for Pigmon.
When again, the contention on politics, Ukraine passing out Parliament Report Biden works to ensure Johnson puts up a vote. Their push could result in a move this month focuses on convincing Johnson of urgency. Republicans acknowledge it and passing given a chance. Affirming staff will cap Donald 10. Admin initiate discussions with Senate reforms require 2/3 of Senate, depending on bipartisan support is uniquely expensive. Bosco 15. The U.S. has not made a good deal. It can use the Council without risking reprimand. Veto power is non-negotiable for the Senate. Ending any cost of U.S. Russia war. So let's go 229. NATO drawing in if Ukraine is defeated, Putin will be encouraged welcomes especially vulnerable Ukraine dealing with a shortage of ammo that could be remedied with more aid. Failure to secure aid sent unfavorable signals. This goes nuclear. Read 19. U.S. Russia armed controls are dead. Cyber hypersonics blur the lines between nuclear and conventional weaponry. This causes usually to lose extinction down 15. The nuclear power would involve nukes and civilization inviting misconception. Section 2 is EU. EU-UN cooperation is high. UN 23. Cooperation between the EU and UN range from peacekeeping to financing progress towards SDGs, but internal disagreements between EU Group 21. The EU is as strong as its member states allow. Inability to weigh in on Israel and Palestine is the example of structural problems. Contact between the EU and international officials yielded to no result in Hungary blocking a joint position. French permanent veto enables swift EU-UN collaboration. Shin 21. The EU delegates authority to states in the NSD permanent seat holders foster EU interests when fulfilling duties. The delegation arrangement allows France to take a proactive stance when the rest of the EU has reached consensus, ensuring a timely response to any crisis. Effective collaboration with the EU and 23. The EU are the largest financial contributor to the UN, leading to donors of development, providing 43% of global assistance. Sustainable development is impact filters are 20. There are multiple others resulting in conflict, instability, and tensions. Risks include natural disasters, cyber attacks, climate change, and global pandemics, sustainable development, access and prevention risks, increased likelihood of extinction through chain reactions, and inhibiting response to other risks. Contention 3 is Israel. Israel's on Sky 24. Israel considered revenge attacks striking new facilities in Iran is on the table. Israel considered but decided against striking. The tiniest move against the country would bring fierce response. Yesterday was just a taste hemorrhage from yesterday. Israel's retaliatory strike against Iran is limited in scope, designed to avoid conflagration. Abolishing permanent membership would push Israel over the edge. Raj 15. Vetoes can be enacted only by permanent members or a form of veto, and Israel will be alarmed about their security. Without veto, steps include sanctions against Israel. Furthering, the U.S. has vetoed 30 resolutions related to Israel, the largest number on one specific issue. Permanent members protect the U.S.-Israel alliance. Isolation causes war with Cornell 17. Israel is uniquely terrified of being alone in the international arena. Any suspicion in the U.S. is backing away from inside Israel to behave more aggressively. Israel needs constant reassurance, support of best panic. Understanding Israel armed with 200 nukes striking the Gulf cannot be dismissed. In the event of a conflict, every 20. Russia and China might be droning nuclear weapons to be used intentionally or by accident. Global famine would result in to destroy civilization. Contention 4 is Taiwan. No invasion now. Taiwan isn't independent, meaning 23. Military planning doesn't mean China will launch a war. The trigger would be concrete steps by Taipei towards independence. Chinese veto stops Taiwan membership, which means no state, W15. The only way to become a state is to be admitted to the UN. Recognition by the UN constitutes the grounds for an anti-secession law. Taiwan has to get China a permanent member. Without consent, it's impossible to be admitted. Support is growing. 2021. Global support for Taiwan and the UN has grown unprecedented strong. US-led Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and the EU have followed suit. LCB 24, a conflict over Taiwan goes nuclear. US plans to strike China in the event of a war could seem like an attempt to overthrow their regime, heightening the odds that they nuke. Extinction star 15, nuclear forceful environment would be too voltage to go for humans to vanish forever. Contention 5 is conflict. Risks are increasing. Stars 23 great power peace has held since World War II. However, it's only on shaky grounds that following Ukraine and Taiwan, a clash is a possibility. Permanent membership stops conflict. 9 is 13. Permanent membership ensures states take other conflicts into perspective. When none of the P5 are directly involved in conflict, permanent presence lessens the probability of war between great powers. And veto empirically prevents drawing. Bosco 14. Resolutions on the Israel-Palestine crisis allowed the U.S. to argue that it defended Israel while giving the Soviet Union room to interpret a full withdrawal of powers. Drafted a joint council, ceasefire council ambiguity helped limit the chances the superpowers would be drawn in. And affirming fractures of council, Y'all 22. Without the veto, P5 countries abandon the UN, and veto allows P5 members to block decisions against their interests and ensure they remain within the UN, even if they say do for 21. P5 states are the largest financial contributors to the UN, making up 43% of the total budget. The power these countries hold is a massive incentive to pump money. The UN must rely on national militaries. If the veto did not exist, non-permanent members can't force the permanent members to use their militaries. Nations will view this as UN is incapable. Conflict goes nuclear, verse 21. In striving for dominance, competitive nuclear powers can find themselves in an inadvertent nuclear exchange, a ratio of nuclear taboo, and heightened likelihood of nuclear conflict in other parts of the globe. That's me.
Okay. Ready for cross? Yeah. Can I get the first question?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Israel, right?
Yeah.
So your link triggers when Israel feels that it's alone on the international stage, correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
So what would happen if another Middle Eastern country would start to normalize ties with Israel? Would they still feel alone?
Are you just like cross-having your case?
Yeah, basically.
I mean, like, we can get to that in a rebuttal if you
I mean, sure, but if Israel has an ally in the region, does that mean that they would not feel isolated on the global stage?
So the issue here, and this is what the Radishitsky card specifically outlines, right, is the U.S., actually, it's in the comment part. It's the U.S. is the key person that's being able to veto and keep Israel like with all of this power, right? Because the U.S. is the only P5 country that's been continuously vetoing in favor of Israel. For the past 30 times they've vetoed in favor of Israel, which is the most on one specific issue, and that means that the only country that actually has the power to keep Israel in its own interest is the U.S. And they're not going to feel any security with other countries because the U.S. is the only one with actual veto power that's defending them. Can I take the question?
Sure.
Let's just talk about that, like Saudi, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just pretend like that you're right, that Saudi can deter Israel and Iran, right? Why does Saudi have to have normalized relationships with either one of them to be able to deter?
Because normalization with Israel allows Saudi Arabia to get security guarantees from the United States, which means that Iran is way less likely, which means A, that Saudi is able to have better ties with Iran since they have recently normalized with each other, and B, it gives them security guarantees, which means that Saudi Arabia now, with an ally in Israel and an ally in Iran, can mediate conflict to make sure that tensions go down.
Okay, so you're only actually also hinges on U.S. having power to mediate the situation.
No, it's Saudi Arabia.
Right, because Saudi Arabia has security guarantees from the U.S.
From the United States, yes, but that happens with normalization. And that's without the UNSC having, that's without the United States' power on the UNSC. Okay. The only thing that's stopping that is U.S. power on the UNSC.
Okay. Wait, what? How?
Because the only way that normalization happens between Saudi Arabia and Israel is through a creation of the Palestinian state. That's what Saudi ministers have outlined. That's the only way that they do it.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's talk about Taiwan.
Yeah.
Why would China invade Taiwan why would China escalate to a nuclear war if China wants to wage a territorial war to take back Taiwan?
Right, so the reason it specifically escalates, which is what the DP evidence is very clear in saying, is that because the U.S. has said that it will defend Taiwan if China begins to attack Taiwan, China will see the U.S.'s encroachment as a sign of them trying to overthrow their regime, which causes a use-it-or-lose-it mentality with their nukes because they think they're about to get overthrown by the U.S. defending Taiwan. Can I take the question?
Sure.
All right, so let's talk about, let's talk about Africa.
Yeah.
So what's your internal linkage to nuke war, I guess?
That the conflicts go nuclear due to the fact that
what's the link before that?
What?
What's the link right before that?
The Finnegan 20 card.
Yeah, what does that say?
There's a lack of arms control. The terrorist groups are filling in power vacuums.
Okay, cool.
Let's cross.
Take a little part. Starting now. Okay. Anyone not ready? Polish. When Ukraine already passed the House yesterday, their evidence is behold. 2 Ukraine depletes stockpiles that fund Taiwan causes a fast Chinese invasion and nuclear war. Green 23. China seizes Taiwan by 2027. Washington prioritizes Ukraine. This delayed arms to Taiwan. Delays undercut deterrence by preventing Taiwan from fielding weapons quickly enough to keep pace with the build-up. Trade-offs will last until industries can produce enough that will take years. Devastatingly clear 24. U.S.-China war over Taiwan and NSD clash could set off a spiral of nuclear escalation. Terminal defense on Taiwan. The only world where China invades is absent. USA because they're funding Ukraine. 3. No expansion in Ukraine. A. Domestic support for Ukrainian invasion has already waned in Russia. Putin will risk another invasion. B. Finland and Baltics join the NATO bloc, increasing deterrence and border support against another Russian offensive. 3. Russia's already lost thousands of troops and depleted its tanks and weapons invading Ukraine. It doesn't have enough resources to invade again. 4. The UN and the Western world would put another layer of sanctions if another invasion occurred, further devastating Russia's resources to invade their economy. On EU. One turn in the EU is on the verge of collapse is tried our AF. Mayor 23. The EU is fighting a losing battle against nationalist populist parties and public opinion, closer integration, protection, shrinking, aging Europe's interests that requires reforms to institutional structure. 24 is make or break for EU shows willingness to embrace change. EU supports reform. DWO. 23. The EU examines inherent weaknesses in the UN. The EU advocates for reforms of the UNSC to enable greater representation. EU aligns with the proposals to limit veto. 2 is on unity. The EU is turning inwards instead of looking to international affairs. Late 24. Elections to member states increase support for anti-EU parties. Elections may tip majorities. The EU agenda bound to see emphasis on protecting European industry, agriculture, jobs, and less on climate free trade. Support for democracy abroad. 3. Brexit thumbs impact. Another reason is triad IAF on Israel. 1. Normalization solved per our link to turn a Palestinian state K2 Israeli security. Butler 24. Recognition of Palestinian state is the only hope to break the endless cycle of violence in the Middle East and ensure security for long-term security for Israel. Israel's own security depends on a two-state solution. There is no long-term security for Israel unless it is recognized by the countries of its region. A Palestinian state would undermine Iran and Iran's other destructive proxies. 2. That solves a conflict that would cause Palestinian normalization undermines the proxies that would start conflict with Israel in the first place. 2. Escalation is inevitable. Kutab on Friday. Having the U.S. May not be enough. Iran strikes highlights the growing willingness and ability of new powers should challenge the West. 3. Leverage would not cause escalation. Ben 23. Washington has numerous ways to put pressure on Israel. The veto and military security alliance illustrate support Israel sell arms to Beijing. The Americans later for all security cooperation. Washington has the last word, not Tel Aviv, for Israel and Lebanon's maritime border. Biden forced Lapid to concede to Barrett and sign the agreement. On Taiwan. One turn of state media's conflict, Wu 23, what China is becoming increasingly aggressive, peace is becoming difficult. The UN makes China accountable and urges peace. Point 03. If Taiwan were a UN state info about threats would enhance UN measures, the RRC and PRC can settle peace through dialogue. The two sides will forge goodwill and trust. 2. China doesn't need veto. China 21. China has more than 170 allies. Taiwan has none. Even if the US proposes, Beijing can rally support to reject. 3. Impact is proof link. Taiwan doesn't want membership. Battle 22. Taiwan is already a sovereign country. There's no need to declare given Beijing free response. Political elites have concluded the differences is minor and not worth fighting over. Blanchard 24. Taiwan's new president wants to keep this quote with China proffering talks with China and maintain peace while pledging to defend the island. 4. No invasion. 3. Warrants. Cut the U.S. commitment warrant. 2. First is semis. Gibson 22. Taiwan accounts for 92% of global semiconductors. If a conflict or interrupt the supply, will dramatically slow China's AI 6G ambitions. 2nd is drones. Stylish 23. Taiwan is dependent on autonomous attack drones to deter invasion capable of attack without human intervention. On conflict. One is on unique. Funding is decreasing now. Stride Act, Dean 24. Only 58 out of the 193 member states have paid in full in 2023. UN collected 82.3%, lowest in 5 years. Year-end arrears climbed to $859 million. It's 2 turn because of power vacuums. Film in 20. The UN can be a force modulator for the interests of the US if Washington competes for influence. Walking out the field will facilitate China to moving into fill the vacuum. A. The push for influence allows for compromise and preventing unfair policy. B. If one great power leaves, that makes power vacuums which their opponents fill in. Even the risk of an opposing fill-in is turning the international community outweighs. 3. They say there's no alternatives, but alternatives exist like G20, NPT, RevCon, Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit, East Asia Summit, etc. 2. Phone calls exist to avoid conflict. Hammer 23. Since 1988, maintain a line to Russia at all times. Officers send a message to Russians day-to-day communications have continued unabated. They view value in maintaining this line. 4. Past attempts to cut funding empirically failed. CFR 24. U.S. have sought to decrease payments in the UN. The U.S. lost its vote in the General Assembly ended with compromise. 5. Turn it. Countries will push for more financial leverage. Schaefer 21. Financial leverage can help secure reform to advance interests and oppose practice counter withholding can leverage reform. For instance, the UN would not have an Inspector General without absent U.S. withholding. Also marked.
Alright. So time. Start. Now, on politics, first we'll concede that it already passed. The turn doesn't matter because there's no aid to pass in second place. It's passed in the first place. Second, we'll concede there's no expansion, which means there's no precedent to send aid, which means regardless the aid doesn't go to Taiwan. And they concede that the only scenario for a Taiwanese invasion is when state had happened, which was not interacted in their last, which means there's no precedent for the turn. On EU, this turn literally makes 0 sense. Yes, they're right that the EU's collapse. We'll concede the EU's going to collapse, which means that there is no collaboration. But this argument has nothing to do with the veto. Our argument was about French turn and veto enabling swift EU-UN collaboration, which has literally nothing to do with the EU and them wanting reform. Even if they want reform, we'll concede that populism, agriculture, jobs, etc. all take out the EU, which means there's no precedent for collapse. And we'll concede Brexit thumbs. On Israel, we will concede their second response that escalation is inevitable. Also takes out their case because it means that if escalation is inevitable, then they as escalation is inevitable, then uniqueness overwhelms the link because if escalation is inevitable, it doesn't matter how much normalization happens because Israel's already scared of Iran. The rest of that, which is literally their case, Palestinian state, we'll get to that in their case. On Taiwan, this is what we're going for. The first thing they say is statehood mediate conflict, but number one, they think uniqueness is the only scenario under which China invades Taiwan is if they declare statehood. I prefer that because it actually comes from Chinese diplomats. And additionally, their evidence from 2003, our evidence post-haste says that China is now scared of Taiwan state, and they consider the anti-secession law that by law, if Taiwan gets under the UN, China has to retaliate because it violates the anti-secession law. The second thing they say is China doesn't need the veto, but our evidence post-haste, it says that even if Taiwan doesn't violate, the US is its support is going for Taiwanese membership on the UN. They consider that Japan, EU, and a bunch of other countries are all supporting the US over China. The third thing they say is that the Taiwan doesn't want membership, but A, they consider it's perceptual, and B, they consider support is growing because they want Taiwan and things like the WHO, Taiwan themselves have said that. The fourth thing they say is that there's no invasion, but the first thing they say is semiconductors, but oh crap, I said this. The first thing they say semiconductors, but Branson won in 1950, the PRC was destitute. Nonetheless, while the U.S. forces in Korea out of concern, Americans would eventually attack China, suffered almost 1 million casualties, which means that China doesn't act rationally when they're under fear of invasion. The second thing they say is that there's drones, but again, they've conceded that it's if Taiwan secedes from China or is perceptually seceding from China, that's the only thing they can do to reclaim the territory. On conflict. First, we'll concede that there's alternatives, things like hotlines, etc. There's no scenario for miscalc, etc. So there's literally no impact to this argument because hotlines will always deter from great power conflict. It doesn't take up that Taiwan scenario because we've read evidence that China acts irrationally in the times where they feel that Taiwan's emboldened. Also, on the turn about financial leverage, they've conceded that P5 is the biggest contributor, so there's no way to increase it. Let's go to their case. On Africa. 1. The A3 is solving now. Dursa 24. The operation of the A3 is a collective body substantially enhanced. The A3 one voice in the UNSC at 63 formal meetings focusing on the African region. 2nd, regional organizations are better. Kadiakla 18. Unlike other organizations, the A was actively shaped conflict management and democratization, the most promising because of their long-standing promotion of economic integration. That turns case, they're mutually exclusive. Williams 14. The relation between the UN and the African Union is characterized by a considerable conflict and mistrust hindering the conduct of effective peace operations. 3rd, withdrawal within 2023. When's the impact? 4th, turn sanctions worse than the problem with Russia veto. Standard 23. The West fails to realize the effect sanctions have on Mali trade. The sanctions are equal at Portugal citizen Monaco, the rest of the card outweighs because instability stems from political distress. 5th, Mali peace groups contribute to SABC. 13, UN peace groups have been involved in the assault of women in Mali, identified as among 1,500 Shadi troops on ZAP. 1, sanctions are already high prominence. 24, the pressure from sanctions is mounting, having an impact on Russia in February. China's beginning, stopping the business cut. The rest of the card. 2nd, which evidence says Russia's vetoing action of ZAP specifically? 3rd, all measures saw Dodge. 23, the General Assembly Democrats, UNSC decision-making states will counter hegemonic coalitions that challenge powerful states to demonstrate the illegitimacy of P5. 4th, they're already solving. UN 23, the UN supports IAEA mission to ZAP nuclear power plant, make arrangements to improve site safety. 5th, their own evidence says the drawing is caused by the plant meltdown, but never read any evidence for actual meltdown. Their own UK says attacks are happening, there's no meltdown now on Palestine. 1, permanent members can get their influence regardless. The U.S. uses sanctions, aid, packages, etc., and other ways to get the way. 2nd, happening now, Gordon 418. If Biden push for a diplomatic deal, presses Israel to accept Palestinian statehood in exchange for diplomatic authority. 3rd, this is a function of our ceasefire. The Constitution but allowed for ceasefires. 1124. During the debate, the U.S. is working to a ceasefire. We will continue direct diplomacy to advocate for normalization ties. 4th, is that Saudi Arabia is already working with Israel, Iran, United States, Golan 418. When Iran loves Zaporizhzhia, Saudi Arabia helped thwart the attack, revealed the Arab nation greater concern about the threat posed by Iran. 5th, this Hornslink is so unrewarded. It doesn't even say that the U.S. or security guarantees. It's an unwarranted assertion that will unwind Iran and Iran's irrational. On genocide, 1, the UN can't solve. Got back to 22 genocide risks include advanced democracy institutions to protect citizens. Consequently, remedies requiring internal actions are unlikely to be effective. The UN processes for controlling racists have been proven ineffective. 2nd, they said genocide first. 1, they can't just our cases over prioritizing the outline what policy makers prioritizing. And 2nd, Parker 17, we failed to love the intergenerational equity, future generations, economic capacity. We future generations lacking, which means they're more under prioritized with their different.
Can you send marked?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's prep. Can I take the first question?
Oh yeah, it's cross. Yeah.
Sorry, like a sec. Okay. Let's talk about Taiwan. So, how does a state become like how would Taiwan become a state in the UN?
That's still new evidence. So Manning says that the only scenario if China invades Taiwan is if Taiwan takes formal steps towards independence. Liu says that admittance to the UN is a formal step towards independence.
But I'm asking how does a country get admitted to the UN?
Like, if support is high enough for the Chung evidence.
Yeah, but can you explain to me the process? How does a country become in the UN?
If you want to answer this question, I feel like
yeah. So it's referred by the UNSC, but then after that it has to be approved by the UNGA. Your own Chung evidence, which I read back, we re-highlighted, it says China has 170 allies within the UNGA. They're really good at coalition building. Just because it says people like Australia or Japan are supporting the US's interest, that's not enough to overcome China's overwhelming majority in the GA.
Yeah, but so the argument is about China versus Taiwan, right? Or, sorry, China versus the US. China wants Taiwan. China doesn't want Taiwan. The US wants Taiwan, right?
Yep.
You've heard evidence that China has allies and Taiwan doesn't have allies. Our argument is China has allies, but the US has more allies. And because these countries are joining the US's side, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, EU, you haven't read evidence that they're on China's side.
Okay, well that's 5 or 6 countries. Our evidence still says.
Okay. Number 1, the EU is the biggest bloc in the UN. Number 2, we said the US and Japan, which are the
okay. Maybe they're the biggest bloc in the SC,
can you name
but
one country other than China that's against Taiwan?
What?
Can you name me one country other than
Probably
China?
Russia, Iran, all their
Where
allies.
is that read in any of your rebuttals?
The Chung evidence is so explicit. It's your own evidence. We read it back at you, and it says very explicitly, Taiwan will not be able to get permanent membership, even absent a veto, because China can coalition build. But we've been on this for a while. You can take your question.
Let's talk about your argument on Saudi Arabia normalization, right?
Yeah.
So, your second link about deterrence, right? Where does it say anything about U.S. security guarantees? Where is the warrant in the manual evidence? Anywhere. It just says normalize relations, undermine Iran's dominance, and the region becomes more stable. Where's the warrant in any of that?
So what's the question?
Where is the warrant? What is the warrant?
For why Saudi, Israel deters Iran?
Yeah.
It's a united front because right now Iran is aggressing because they perceive that allies don't want to get involved on the side of Israel so they can get away with it. But our argument is that when you get Saudi involved, which is a regional power with a lot of capabilities and a lot of experience with deterring Iran, then that's what's actually going to deter them.
So what happened when Iran just struck Israel 2 days ago? What did Saudi Arabia do? They defended Israel. So if Saudi Arabia is already defending
Okay,
Israel,
they didn't actually. So
they straight up did. Yeah.
Okay, wait. What does your evidence say?
It pretty clearly says that Saudi Arabia went to Israel's rescue and stopped the missiles from attacking. If that's the case, aren't normalizations already normalized?
All right, give me a sec. I need to look at the evidence.
Okay, I have a slight feel you're all probably are not going to go with this argument.
Yeah, whatever. We're not going for it.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah. Just like type stuff in the document. Can you grab the table too?
We have an extension for SAP.
Yeah. I'm gonna be like down in the extensions area.
Yeah, please stop.
All right. What is our case? Weighing. Their case. On our case, we'll concede that the A3 is solving now, meaning the regional organizations are already taking precedence, so that definitely takes out the turn. You're going to be voting on Zaporizhzhia. Russian attacks on Ukrainian nuclear facilities are increasing in the scope. Russia vetoes UNSC directives, MP codes, and turn the region to a DMZ where dangerously close to nuclear acts and sanctions force compliance. NATO-Russia war escalates swiftly. Escalation per star, which leads to. Extinction per star because of nuclear war. They say that sanctions are high right now, but A, they're already attacking, and B, the sanctions that they outline are unilateral. We need multilateral sanctions from the UN. That's what Russia keeps on vetoing. Then they say alternative solving. Obviously, that's not working right now. Our evidence posting says that Russia's still attacking. Then they say that they're already solving. The IAEA evidence is from 2023. Ours is from 2024, and says that the IAEA can't solve because there's no military component. We need a DMZ, the demilitarized zone. That is what's key, and that's what Russia's vetoing. They say that Russia's not vetoing anything. Our evidence is very explicit, saying that Russia's vetoing the exact directives that are extremely popular for protecting the power plant. Then Russia's increasing the attacks in the past week. They're saying that Russia's not attacking right now. That's literally not true if they're attacking in the status quo. On the weighing, first on time frame, we give the only delineated break in the round. It's 1 week. In 1 week, Russia's going to attack its try to die for the app. Their own scenario triggers in 2027 regardless, and it takes much more time for China to launch a whole war on Taiwan. It takes time for them to build up the military resources, but our scenario happens in a week and Russia's already ready to attack. Secondly, a NATO-Russia war incentivizes China to attack Taiwan insofar as the US and other allies are drawn into the NATO war because those are their allies. It means that Taiwan will be undefended and allows China to go into the region and start a war because Taiwan is not being protected, meaning that the status quo is the only way we can protect Taiwan. Thirdly, it's try or die for the AF. You already know that Russia's going to attack, so you're voting on a risk of offense on our case. On their case, go down to the funding term. They severely mishandle it. First, the non-unique extended. That funding is going down right now. That's going to kill the UN. But they can see the Schaefer evidence that says that when we affirm countries are going to up their funding in order to have financial leverage on the UN. Meaning that they're going to be giving more money. Solving a UN collapse is key because it independently short circuits China. If there's no UN, China gets angry and lashes out because they don't have the power. And B, it allows them to go and invade Taiwan because literally no one can stop them. They cold concede the term, meaning that you can vote there. On Taiwan, first extend their own Chunk 21 evidence, which postdates the Liu evidence that concedes that China has 170 allies in the UNGA and can block Taiwan regardless, even if they can name a couple U.S. allies. Insofar as their own evidence concedes China has more. It's pretty clean. Secondly, they can see the fact that the Taiwan makes 92% of semiconductors, which is key to China's AI ambitions. This evidence postdates a 1950 example by a century, which is about a totally different administration. China is now uniquely focused on hegemony. Thirdly, extend the fact that they say themselves that countries can do things like diplomatic influence and sanctions to get their way, but it doesn't apply to. It takes out their case, but doesn't apply to Russia insofar as Russia doesn't have allies, but China obviously does. Its terminal defense. You vote AF.
One. Our case weighing their case. Okay. Everyone good? No, nothing you read. Extend Taiwan, China will invade Taiwan because the only path to statehood is even the rest of the world is on board. Absent China's veto, Taiwan becomes a state, triggering the anti-secession law. This leads China to lash out at Taiwan, causing the U.S. draw and escalating to nuclear from use it or lose it, leading to extinction or famine. On the responses, first, they say China has more allies. It's about Chinese allies versus U.S. allies, not Chinese allies versus Taiwanese allies. Their evidence doesn't say China can block Taiwan. Our evidence says support is growing, and the U.S. allies like EU, Japan, Australia are what causes China to believe Taiwan will become a state, since they conceded through rebuttal and summary that it's perceptual. China perceives the U.S. as encircling them, which uniquely triggers the China lash out, which so it matters whether the U.S. has allies in support, not whether China has allies against it. But second, they say semiconductor assault, but they conceded that China acts irrationally when their statehood is threatened, and they have to attack, and they've been attacked under the anti-secession law, which means that semiconductors don't, and empirically we saw that semiconductors don't stop anything. But third, they say diplomacy and sanctions solve. They've conceded from Arnold's rebuttal that China acts irrationally, which is when it feels threatened by the U.S. and they're legally obligated to attack per the anti-secession law, which means diplomacy and sanctions definitely don't solve. But then, on the funny turn, they've coincidentally conceded Arnold's frontline that smaller countries do not have the financial capacity to make up the P5 contributions because the P5 make up half the funding for the new evidence, which they conceded, which means there's no all funding and there's no allocation of funding to Taiwan, given that the argument is perceptual, so even if the UN collapses, China still attacks because they're scared. Go to the way. They say they outweigh on time period. Our argument is perceptual. Its definition comes first, which means we definitely come first because it's perceptual. The second, we pre-rec if China attacks Taiwan, we withdrew troops from Ukraine and enable Russia to attack. So Taiwan comes first on a later level before to Russia. But third, on try or die time frame comes first because of intervening actors. There's a risk that someone solves their case before anything happens. But our arguments trigger instantly and can't be solved. So time frame up layers try or die. Go to their case. We're going for the turn on see what extent that the AU and other regional actors are already solving their case because it's more localized and has more regional connections, but they've conceded that banning permanent veto and allowing the UN into Africa necessarily trades off because the AU and UN can't work together, extend their own impact and instability in Africa causes great power and nuclear or from terrorism, extinction from famine. They say they can get on the turn by conceding AU is solving. Big mistake, they conceded the Williams evidence that is mutually exclusive because African mistrust in UN and US means the impact definitely triggers, and they conceded that AU solves better than the A3. This literally conceded linked into extinction, and they conceded the FARC are evidence, so extinction comes first. This outweighs on probability because terrorists also aren't bound by hotlines and other constraints, and they probably act a lot more irrationally, which means you can weigh the extinction on probability as well. On Zap, they've conceded the Dial evidence pulled from their last case that we can just use the General Assembly to pass resolutions because it democratizes decision making. This is literally dropped, and they say there's no precedence, but they've conceded it's been working, which means that none of the impacts that they say are going to trigger. They've also conceded that great powers will just lobby for their decisions anyway, like Russia uses aid packages, etc. in the past. So that also takes it out. But then they say that sanctions are unilateral. No, they're not. They're endorsed by China and the US, so they're definitely multilateral, which means a non-unique their case because the multilateral sanctions happen anyway. They've been happening now, and they're going to happen in either rule, which means they don't have any defense. At the end of the day, you're buying the regionalism term first, and then Taiwan comes next.
All right. Time for a wing on the regional turn. It takes time. This would take 2 nuclear powers.
Ready for cross?
Yep.
I'll take cross.
Yeah.
You guys can take first question.
Or, do you want to take?
I'll let them take.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't expect you.
I'll take it.
Okay.
So can we agree the Chung evidence we're both reading the same piece of evidence, like the defense we're extending on your Taiwan argument?
I didn't actually check because it doesn't really matter because you're citing Chung as China versus Taiwan. We're citing it as China versus the US, which matters more because that's per your own analysis how unit things work. But yeah, it might be the same amount of Chung.
Yeah, no, but the Chung evidence is like really, really explicit. It takes into account, like if it's the same article, it's the same person writing, right? They take into account what they said earlier about the US having allies. But if you read the Chung evidence, it says, even if the US, Japan, and the EU raise a proposal, Beijing can easily rally enough support from the global body to reject the proposal. That was like clean conceded.
Yeah, so the problem is we've read other evidence indicating that support is also great, right? It's on.
Yeah, your Liu evidence, that's from 2015. We've made the analysis that Chung postdates.
But regardless, like, the argument is there's an upward trend, right? There's an upward trend for Taiwanese admittance, right? That was written in 2021. Support is growing since then, right?
No,
and you also think that the only scenario for a Chinese invasion is statehood, which means it's still perceptual. Any risk that China feels scared about it is enough for us to win the argument. Given that you've also conceded frontline evidence, which I read in rebuttal, I think it's from Beckley, I forget the author's last name, that China has irrationally in any case of Taiwan being taken away from them. So even if there's some risk that China maybe thinks they can do it, you're still like preferring this a heavily improbability. I guess I can make a question on Zap.
Sure.
So you say the sanctions are unilateral.
Yeah.
If China and the US are both doing it, then
That's not multilateral. That's
Like they're each doing it individually. Also, our argument isn't even about sanctions. It's about a DMZ, a demilitarization zone, that is enforced through peacekeeping forces. That was like flat out conceded in every speech.
So to clarify, the way you enforce the DMZ is if Russia doesn't clarify, it doesn't agree to the DMZ, you sanction them, right? Sanctions are the mechanism behind how you enforce these DMZs. So if you've conceded that China and the US are already imposing multilateral sanctions,
they can't.
Multilateral means 2 countries, right? Or
No,
like greater than 1 country, right? If there are multiple countries already sanctioning Russia, then how is there any more enforcement in the app world?
Because no, those are still unilateral sanctions. They're only doing them on their when the UN does multilateral sanction, it's the UN that comes up with the sanction and tells the other countries how to do it. The US and China are doing different types of sanctions, doing different types of sanctions, and we need the DMZ and we need the peacekeepers in order to get rid of all the military operations in the area.
Which piece of evidence says UN sanctions better than unilateral sanctions? or not unilateral sanctions, U.S. plus China sanctions.
No, your evidence just says that it's unilateral sanctions.
Yeah, so
that's what it
The
says.
solvency evidence in your case just says we need sanctions.
Sure.
Where in that piece of evidence does it say that we need UNSC sanctions?
It's the fact that it's the fact. Okay, so if the sanctions
say
aren't working now because Russia is still just vetoing
so
our.
Sanctions would fail regardless. Like if sanctions
No, because we're still enforcing.
Like
No, because we're still enforcing the demilitarized zone.
but the way you enforce DMCs is through sanctions, right? That's the entire point of a sanction. If Russia doesn't agree to the DMC, you sanction them, right? So our argument is that we're already sanctioning them, and either you're right, nothing's happening, and right, like that means sanctions fail, or stuff is happening. So
Well, the only reason why it's failing is because Russia keeps on vetoing the resolutions. That's cross.
Funding turn weighing their China-Taiwan argument, our Zapatron argument.
Make sure you weigh against the turn.
Yes. Can I get the table too?
Yeah.
Okay. Is anybody not ready? We all know you should prefer conceded arguments because it reduces judge intervention. At that point, extend the funding turn has been cold conceded and mishandled in every single speech. They have conceded that right now funding is decreasing in the UN, which means that collapse is inevitable. It's a try or die for the AF. And they have conceded that in our world, the Schaefer evidence concedes that the Schaefer evidence says that financial contributions go up because countries want to use leverage to try to gain votes, which means that the big P5, instead of having to resort to their veto, now have to use funding to the UN to try to gain votes per their own analysis on our Zapatron argument, which means that funding goes up, which saves the UN. They have conceded all of the UN do not allow new response and second final focus. They have conceded that when the UN collapses, that means that China loses a lot of power on the international stage, causing domestic unrest and the least get mad, which causes China to lash on and invade Taiwan, which short circuit link. They have conceded that always on time because they have perceptual link. Right now, the UN is collapsing, which means that try or die. They have also conceded time frame weighing on their case that China has to build up the capabilities in order to actually invade Taiwan. 2027 is their brink. Well, our evidence all triggers immediately and per their own way. Time frame, whichever argument comes on time frame first, you would look at that argument. They've also conceded that when the UN collapses, we can't do any checkbacks on Taiwan escalation, and we also can't do checkbacks on things like escalation in Africa. They're all there weighing on the Africa turn is new and second summary, so I get new responses. We would argue that it takes a super long time to happen. A, they don't extend a warrant on the impact, and B, there's no brink. It's been happening forever. Like the UN has been involved for a really long time. However, we would also argue that it takes a long time to escalate because terrorists have to get the nukes, the countries have to collapse. All that takes a super long time, but our arguments all come first. Okay, we're winning the weighing there. We're winning offense. You don't even need to look to any of theirs. But on Taiwan, they have conceded the Chang evidence, which is the most important piece of evidence in the ground. We both agree it's the same piece of evidence. It is better than the Liu evidence because it postdates it by 6 years. And it concludes that even though the U.S. could raise a proposal with Japan and the EU, it's still China still has enough support within the GA to block Taiwan, which means they have no perception that it's going to happen because they are confident in their allies that it will not happen. Do not let them get away with this perceptual link because they have to build the capabilities in the first place. At that point, that's basically it, but on Zapatron, you can extend it. Russian attacks on Ukrainian facilities are increasing the scores, but Russia vetoes UNSC directive to send PKOs and turn the region into DMZ. We are dangerous because nuclear accidents, nation force, combined NATO war escalates swiftly. They concede that this causes us to pull away from Taiwan, which causes the invasion. All they say is the GA solves, but there's no warrant. It's the UNSC. Veto groups all their responses.
Okay. 3 seconds. Yeah, all right. We'll start with 3 seconds. Okay. Or it's going to be the turn on Africa, then like on their funding turn, because that's technically a response. Then Taiwan. Okay. Is anybody not ready? Okay. Lots of time. Start. Now, start on the probability 1 terror. They see that terrorists are the most irrational actors, which is the most probable scenario, and also outweighs on time frame because it's happening now. Extend the turn. The AU and other regional organizations are already solving their case because it's more local than more regional connection. But they see that banning permanent veto allows the UN into Africa and necessarily trades off because the AU and the UN can't work together. Extend their impact that instability in Africa causes great power drawn and nuclear war for terrorism extinction from man because of UN withdrawal. In summary, they tried to take the turn back and take the A3 solving, but again, they take the wheel example and mutual excuse because of African mistrust in the UN and the US. On the funding turn, which is the only semi-response to this argument, they have conceded so many things. One, they have conceded that our argument on Africa is just outweighs on time frame because they have not explained when this collapse ends, but you know for a fact that escalation is happening, or escalation will happen immediately post-AF because if the UN withdraws, it allows the A3 to solve. They think that that is the only way to solve AF, because they can form regional ties. So even if the UN collapses, it's an argument about conceded time frame weighing, and they think that time frame comes first because intervening actors can always solve for an argument down the line, but we need to like prioritize arguments that happen now. Time frame comes first on your ballot. It's conceded that there is no time frame on any of their arguments because the UN collapse happens way down the line. So intervening actors can always solve against, say, a UN collapse, or intervening actors can always solve against the Zap argument. It's a conceded argument where time frame comes first, which means you vote on it. Okay, let's extend Taiwan then. Extend Taiwan. China wanted to make Taiwan because the only passive statehood is the UN. The rest of the world is on board after China's veto Taiwan because it's taking the anti-accession law. This leads to Chinese lashing out Taiwan because the US trying to escalate into nuclear war, use it lead to a state from Canada. They conceded all the front lines and defense aid. The only thing they say, the one thing they say is that Chung post states, but again, they conceded that our evidence is also Chung, but more importantly, their Chung evidence is implicated as China versus Taiwan. We're going for as Chinese allies versus the US allies, which means even if Taiwan is an ally, the US has allies, and support is growing. They've also conceded that China acts irrationally in times when they think that Taiwan is being invaded, and because it's a perceptual argument because it triggered the anti-secession law. Vote on the conceded front line in rebuttal that China acts irrationally whenever any threat of Taiwan is taken away from them. On Zap. They've conceded, or wait, Taiwan conceded pre-work that China attacks Taiwan, we withdraw troops from Ukraine and allows that to happen. They conceded also outweighs the time frame. Remember, time frame comes first on your ballot. It was conceded in their argument. It also again takes out their funding term because there's no time frame on the funding term, which is modifying in summary. On Zap. They think that unilateral or multilateral sanctions are already solving the argument. Sanctions are the way you enforce DMCs, and sanctions already exist in the status quo. It means there's no way for their arguments to be solved. Top layer, though, they're probably all they're going for the funding term. Time frame matters more. The AU argument comes first.
Good round.
Good round.
Thank you for judging.
Sydney, a card doc? A card doc?
For what?
A card doc is just the cards that you reference in your final focus.
Okay.
That you want me to evaluate.
Does that include like case and stuff?
Just whatever cards
Okay.
that you felt I should be looking at. That's when we came to the TOC. So I ended up voting F. I actually was writing a neg ballot up until like mid-decision when I started looking at the evidence. So first I'm gonna go on the Taiwan and like the term stuff, but that's where I spent most of my time evaluating the round. On the Taiwan thing, I think that the neg definitely wins. There's like a high risk that China invades if Taiwan gets statehood because the neg drops that China is irrational, and then like the anti-secession laws means that they're legally forced to invade. So now I kind of just look at if Taiwan will get statehood, and I think that most of this debate goes on like the Chung evidence. When I look at the Chung evidence, I think that the app's explanation is pretty good. The part they cut in Chung evidence definitely assumes like US opposing stuff and like their allies as well. I don't think that the neg cut of Chung evidence has the argument that you're kind of implicating it to have, which is like US allies and that will like counter China's allies. I don't know. But their Chung evidence definitely says that if the US opposes something, then they can definitely rally all their allies to like veto it. So I think they probably win that Taiwan doesn't become a state in that case, and I don't think that the top analysis about China invading matters as much if Taiwan doesn't become a state. So if you lose that, I think that I probably mean that I'm gonna like air out on the funding term and the Zaptron contention. I think that a lot of this, the neg answers to these two things were implicated on the Taiwan term. Like the time frame stuff is implicated on Taiwan, and since you didn't win Taiwan, I don't think any of that matters as much. I think that if Taiwan doesn't get statehood, it probably takes out your answers to those arguments. Do you have any questions?